In this chapter, we're going to take a deeper dive, you might want to say, into market strategy. After all, we really need to understand the strategy in order to fulfill the need that our customers have by creating a marketing offering that they want. Back in Chapter 1's lecture, I introduced STP in sort of an overview format. In this lecture, we're going to look at these concepts, but in greater depth. So we're looking at this in what we call a value-driven market strategy. Now, as a reminder, market segmentation involves dividing a market into smaller segments of buyers with distinct needs, characteristics, and behaviors that might require separate marketing strategies. Where market targeting, or what we just simply call targeting, consists of evaluating each market segmentation's attractiveness and selecting one or more market segments to enter. Now, both of those tend to go with selecting the customer base that we want to service. Now, on the other side, once we've selected basically the customer base we want to service, we then have to decide on how we're going to add value. And those are going to be done through differentiation and through positioning. Now, positioning is the process of creating a market offering that will occupy some sort of a clear, distinctive, and desirable place relative to the competition that's out there in the minds of our target customers. Differentiation is exactly what it sounds. It involves differentiating the firm's marketing offers to create some sort of superior customer value. If we do this correctly, then we have created value for those targeted customers, and they will see a difference between basically our offering and other offerings, and they will find that our offerings will satisfy their needs on a higher level than the other offerings. That's what this is all about. Let's first look at segmentation and target marketing for selecting the customers to serve. If we pick the right group, then we're going to do well. Now, I know many of you will say, but I would sell to everyone. And as soon as you say you're going to sell to everyone, you're going to fail. You're going to allow everyone, of course, to buy your product. But generally, we really are targeting a specific group of potential customers. Now, for our target market to be useful, the size, purchasing power, and profile of the market segmentation needs to be measurable. Basically, what we're saying is I've got to be able to go out there and see what the size of the people, the market is. I always remember this funny ad, and the gentleman was saying that he had found finally the perfect target market for their company. They had worked really hard at this, and the size was one person. Well, they could measure it, but was that really going to be a successful element for segmentation? So is your group measurable? Can you find out where they are, who they are, and you might want to say the basic numbers. Now, market segmentation that you want to use also has to be accessible. Basically, we have to be able to reach and serve them. If we can't find them, if we can't reach them, then they're not going to be a successful segmentation for us. I don't know how many direct mail lists there are for nuclear scientists in the United States who work at nuclear power plants, let's say. That might be a list that's very hard to find. They may not be accessible. It may be kind of a hidden fact. So that would not be a group that may be very good for us to target if we can't find them in the first place. Which also brings us to sustainability. Means the group is large enough or profitable enough to serve. Now, there are many groups we may want to serve, but I'm not certain exactly how many high school students can really afford a brand new BMW. Maybe their parents can afford a brand new BMW. So then I would be target marketing the parents, but I wouldn't be target marketing them. I wouldn't segment that group out. So we have to look at the group as large enough and profitable enough for us. And that means that the group should be differentiatable, which means that they should be something distinguishable about this target market. Not only should there be something different about this market, but they should respond differently to the different marketing mix elements, the 4 Ps, than other groups would respond to them. And finally, the segment should be actionable, which means that the marketing program can be designed for attracting and serving that particular segment. If we don't have all of those elements in place, then it's probably not going to be a very successful target market for us. How we segment the market, there's a gazillion different ways. But there are three major segmentations that we tend to look at when we talk about segmenting our markets. Our first one is geographic segmentations. Now, this calls for dividing the market into different groups and units, such as nations or states, cities, even neighborhoods. Now, going to cars, we can see that we have a car that drives on the right and a car that drives on the left. So we know that in the United States, we drive on one side of the road, but in other areas of the world, they drive on a different side of the road. So we would be making cars for those particular segments. We can also just look within the United States. The type of things that somebody in North Dakota needs for their car is going to be very different than the things that perhaps somebody in the South will need for their car. Up in North Dakota, it gets so cold, you have to have a car that won't freeze. Maybe even a car that turns on automatically and warms itself up. Whereas here, where I live in Florida, the thought of having a car without air conditioning, well, that just isn't going to happen. Most people are not going to buy a car without air conditioning. Now, demographic segmentation divides a group into segments based on things such as age, life cycle, gender, income, religion, education, generational. Demographic factors are probably the most popular basis for segmenting customer groups. And here we can see that we're looking at basically the demographics of who we sell certain cars to. Now, if you look at this for a second, you might have noticed that there's a group right here which are all about 42. So why would people who are in their 42s be wanting minivans, wagons, and sports utilities? Well, by then, if you've had kids, they're getting pretty big. And those little sports cars that you may have started with down here, they ain't going to fit those big kids anymore. And so people begin to look for things that can help them move their entire family as they go. Some companies will use age and life cycle segmentation to offer different products or using different marketing approaches for different ages. I'll give you another example. Oscar Mayer brand includes Lunchables. Now, Lunchables were a convenient packed lunch for children. Now, to extend the sustainability of that very successful Lunchable, Oscar Mayer later introduced Lunchables uploads for teenagers and even an adult version of what they call P3, which is the portable protein pack. In order to do this, they had to understand that their different demographic groups would desire different things. Gender segmentation divides marks into different segments based on gender and has long been used in things such as clothing, toiletries, toys, magazines. For example, the men's personal care industry has exploded recently, and many cosmetic brands that previously were created just basically for women now have successful marketing lines. I recently took my son to the store and he bought some Dove shampoo for men, and it says Dove for men. So what we're finding is that we can use these brands, but if you looked at the container for men and you looked at the container for women, they were very different looking. And they needed to be different looking because he felt that he would need some sort of a different product than a woman would need for her hair. Now, income segmentation involves basically dividing a market into different income segments. For example, retailers such as Dollar General, Family Dollar, and Dollar Tree stores have been very successful at targeting low to middle income groups. The core market for such stores is basically represented by families with incomes $30,000 or less. With low income strategy, dollar stores are now one of the fastest growing retailers in the nation. Just take a look at their stock prices and you can see just how successful they have been. Now, the last one of the major three is what we say is psychographic segmentation. It divides buyers into different segments based on social class, lifestyle, even personal characteristics. Now, people in the same demographic group, though, can have very different psychographic groups. Often the products that people buy will reflect their lifestyle. So Tesla is definitely going after the psychographics, not so much the demographics of a group. The final sort of big segmentation is behavioral segmentation. However, behavioral segmentation is often broken up into many subsets. But many marketers believe that behavioral variables are the best starting point for building market segmentation. So some of the most common is occasion segmentation. And that divides a market into segments according to the occasions when buyers get the idea to buy or actually make their purchase or use the purchase item. This segmentation can help firms build up product usage. Companies try to boost consumption by promoting usage during non traditional occasions. So, as an example, being in Florida, we think of orange juice. But most people think of orange juice as something you drink in the morning. But our local growers want you to think about drinking orange juice anytime. That is a cool and healthy refreshing at other times of the day. Maybe it's a good afternoon drink when things are hot. As far as cars are concerned, in the particular one that I have here, is that we can think of that, maybe there's an occasion you need to transport packages. And so you can think about U-Haul as being sort of advertising in the occasion. Or you may be a person who runs a business and you need to buy a van to be able to haul packages every once in a while. Now, benefit segmentation divides a group into segments according to the different benefits that the consumer is seeking from the product. So in this case, what we're looking at between these two is that this particular person or this area with the Ford F-150s especially is about towing capacity. What benefits are we looking for? We're looking for the ability to tow something heavy and hard or big and whatever. Doesn't matter. I want to have that benefit. Without that benefit, then the product is useless to me. Now, user status segmentation is basically into a couple of different groups. We have the non-users, the ex-users, the potential users, first-time users, regular users of the product. Now, marketers want to reinforce and retain regular users, attract, of course, non-users, and reinvigorate relationships with ex-users. Included in the potential user groups are consumers facing lifestyle changes. And that's why in this particular case, I picked Buick. Buick right here is kind of an interesting one in that right now they seem to be advertising and saying, hey, you've moved on, you've got a different lifestyle, you're going into a new area of life, you deserve to basically step it up to a Buick. The next one is basically usage rate segmentation, dividing into medium, light, and heavy product users. Heavies are often a small percentage of the market, but they contain or account for a very high percentage of total consumption. Many of you have already had other management classes where you'll learn the 80-20 rule, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in more depth. But what the 80-20 rule basically says is that 80% of your sales will come from 20% of your customers. A company that really learned that was Taco Bell. At one point, Taco Bell, somewhere in the late 90s, was beginning to struggle. They had a menu that had a gazillion different things on it. And yes, they were having sales, but their return rate had really fallen off. And what they began to realize is that they were not really servicing the 20% of their customers that were regular users, and they were beginning to lose them. So they went back and they said to their regular customers, what is it that you want? They cut everything from the menu, and their profit margins went up dramatically. So we really need to make sure we understand who our regular users are. A company such as Walgreens. If you have a Walgreens in your area, you may find that when you come in, if you're a regular user, they will say hello to you. They try very hard to understand who the regular neighborhood users are because they know that if they treat them well, they're going to be much more likely to come back again and again and again. They want you to be a heavy user of that particular pharmacy or whatever else that they occupy there. Which also brings us into loyalty status. Consumers can be loyal to brands, stores, and companies. High loyalty customers promote the brand and through their personal word of mouth and through social media, to be honest. In contrast, by studying the less loyal buyers, a company can detect which brands are most competitive with its own. By looking at customers who are shifting away from the brand, the company can learn about its marketing weaknesses and take actions to correct them. Honda has a very strong loyalty brand to it. People who tend to buy Hondas will tend to buy Hondas 2 or 3 times in a row and often recommend Hondas to other people. To be honest, marketers rarely limit their segmentation analysis to only one or a few variables. Rather, they often use multiple segmentation bases in an effort to identify smaller and better defined target groups. Segmentation systems help marketers segment people and locate them into marketable groups of like minded consumers. Such segmentation helps companies identify and better understand the key customer segments, reaching them more efficiently, and tailoring marketing offers and messages to their specific needs. So, with the Volkswagen Group, you see that there are a variety of different labels and brands, and each one of these is being offered or marketed to a very specific type of customer. And the customer who's probably going to buy the VW is probably not going to really be looking at Bentleys. What they want to do though is get as many different groups of people as they can to buy one of their particular products. One of the companies who's fantastic at this is Procter and Gamble. And we'll talk about soaps in a little while. But one day, just go by and look at the something like, I don't know, detergent, and look at how much of that is actually produced by the same company, Procter and Gamble. They're using multiple segmentation basing because they know if they don't make the product, another company will make the product and they will lose that market share. Market segmentation reveals the firm's marketing segment opportunities. A firm must evaluate the various segments and decide how many and which segments it can serve best. In evaluating different market segments, the firm must look at three basic factors. First, a company wants to select a segment that's the right size and has the right growth characteristics. Companies sometimes, especially new companies, may actually bite off things that are bigger than they can chew. Meaning is that they've created a product, they go after a market, but they just simply don't have the resources to handle the amount of orders that are coming in. That kind of goes along with the second one, which is that companies need to examine major structural factors that affect long-run segmentation attractiveness, like how strong and aggressive the competitors are in the market, or if it's easy for new competitors to come into the segment. You might even want to look at the actual or potential substitute products. As an example, cameras basically lost out to cell phones. We still buy cameras, but most of the small cameras that were produced have really gone away, and now they're going to be high power cameras. They have to be better than what's in the cell phone. We want to look at the relative power of the buyer and the powerfulness of the suppliers. Both of those can affect our segment attractiveness. Now, finally, a company must consider its own objectives and basically its resources. Some attractive segments can be dismissed too quickly because basically they just don't mesh with the company's long run objectives. Or a company may also lack the skills and resources needed to basically not only attract the segment, but to maintain the segment. It's probably a little worse to get a group interested in you, not be able to deliver, and then have them leave. It's going to be very difficult, if impossible, to get that group back. Now, companies can target very broadly or narrowly or somewhere in between. Undifferentiated, or what we call mass marketing, refers to market coverage strategy in which a firm decides to ignore market segmentation differences and go after the whole market in one offering. However, a company can also do mass customization. This is the process by which a firm interacts one-on-one with the masses of customers to design a product, service, or marketing program tailor-made to individual needs. Tend to think about McDonald's and you can order a burger your way. Wendy's is very much doing that. Differentiated or segment marketing refers to market coverage strategies in which a firm decides to target several market segmentations and design separate offerings for each. Concentrated or niche marketing refers to a marketing coverage strategy in which a firm goes after a large share of one or a few smaller segments or basically niches. Now, you shouldn't overlook this market. It can be extremely profitable because you can make something that works very well in a particular area. So I always remember that there was this particular cream soda that was only made and sold in delis in New York City. This firm is tremendously profitable. People seek out and know that they can only get that product in that particular area. They don't desire to grow further. They don't desire to be any bigger. They know what they do well, and that's what they do. Now, micro-marketing is a practice of tailoring products and marketing programs to suit specifics of individuals and locations. Now, it's a slightly different viewpoint than the other segmentations, in that rather than seeing customers in every individual, micro-marketers see individuals in every single customer. Micro marketing can also include what we call local marketing and individual marketing. Now, local marketing involves tailoring a brand or market to the needs and wants of local customer segments, such as cities, neighborhoods, or even specific stores. For example, when Uber was trying to expand its geographical reach, it used big data from social media platforms to learn more about specific transportation problems in each city it was looking to move into. The resulting effect was the growth of the company's client base through tailored promotions and referral benefits. I happen to live on a barrier island here in Florida, and our local Walmart carries products that the Walmart on the mainland does not cover. And that's because we are right across from the beach in this Walmart. So it has bathing suits and types of shorts that are not available generally in other areas. They also tend to have more beach-oriented products as general from local producers. So they are basically, in this case, micro-marketing to a particular store location. Now, individual marketing involves tailoring products and programmings to the needs and preferences of individual customers. Today, businesses are able to offer more personalized marketing schemes to each individual in their target pool, as opposed to hitting a mass audience all at once. With technology constantly advancing and the delivery of highly customized products to individual segments of the population, it's become much easier for people to deliver. I don't know about you, but every time I look on something like Facebook, I'm being offered a t-shirt with my name on it, or something that perhaps I have looked at in the past. If I was looking at Disney World or I was looking at something about, I don't know, dragons, I suddenly get t-shirts that have my name and dragons, or a t-shirt and my name and Mickey Mouse. Now, the biggest challenge in micro-marketing, though, is its high cost of implementation and the lack of economy of scales. After all, if you're marketing to just me with my name, even though you might be able to use the rest of the design, the truth is the production of that is not going to allow you to really ramp up with the economy of scales. If you don't know what that is, you'll learn about that in economics class. Companies need to consider many factors when choosing a market targeting strategy. Which strategy works best depends on the company's resources. When the firm's resources are limited, concentrated marketing makes the most sense. The best strategy also will depend on the degree to the product's variability. In the case of a uniform product, let's say peaches, undifferentiated marketing may be more suitable. But in case of a product that varies in designs, think cars, a more narrow differentiation or concentrated marketing approach tends to work much better. Now, where the product is in its life cycle is also a factor. When a firm introduces a new product, it may be best just to launch one version of that product, and then an undifferentiated marketing or concentrated marketing may make the most sense. However, if that product is in the mature stage of the product life cycle, a differentiation marketing can also be useful. Another factor is market variability. If most buyers have the same taste, buy the same amount, and react in the same way to the marketing effort, undifferentiated marketing is the approach that can be the most effective. And finally, really need to understand the competitor's marketing strategy. It has to be reviewed when selecting the organization's strategy. As an example, let's say your competitor is using differentiated marketing. Then if you use undifferentiated marketing, that can be really dangerous, particularly if the target market desires not to be part of the masses, which is what basically undifferentiation promotes. However, if your organization might also gain an advantage by using a different target marketing strategy than your competitors, especially if the customer can serve individual customers better than the competitor. If the competitor is using differentiated marketing, then a micro marketing strategy might work best for you because you can tailor things to the individual group that you're working with. You often see this in business to business marketing. So we've looked at selecting customers to serve. Now we need to decide on the value proposition that we're going to offer. And we do this through differentiation and positioning. Jack Wells served as CEO of GE for many, many years and became basically a business superstar. He was named Manager of the Century in 2000 after General Electric's revenues jumped by fivefold. He was famous for saying, if you don't have a competitive advantage, don't compete. And basically, that's what we're going to be talking about, is the development of your competitive advantage. Competitive advantage refers to an advantage over competitors gained by offering customers greater value, either by having a lower price or providing more benefit that tends to justify the higher price. To find points of differentiation, marketers must think through the customer's entire experience with the company's products or their services. Through product differentiation, a brand can differentiate on features, performance, design. Now, some companies will gain service differentiation through the speed or convenience of their service. Firms that practice channel differentiation gain competitive advantage through the way they design their channel coverage, their experiences, their expertise, and their performance. Companies can also gain strong competitive advantage through people differentiation, that is, the hiring and training of better people than their competitors. Even when competitors' offers look the same, buyers may perceive a difference based on the company or the brand's image differentiation. A company or brand image should convey the product's distinctive benefits and its positioning. Now, many marketers think that companies should aggressively promote only one benefit to the target market. A company should develop this unique selling proposition, or they sometimes refer to as a USP, for each brand and stick to it. Each brand should pick one attribute and tout itself as number one on that attribute. We're the biggest, the strongest, the smallest, the fastest. Other marketers think that companies should position themselves on more than one differentiating. I am the fastest, but also the easiest to use. However, today, in a time when mass market is basically fragmented into many, many small segments, companies and brands are trying to broaden their positioning strategies to appeal to many more segments. A customer's value proposition, which, by the way, seems to be hard for me to say along with Peter Piper, so I apologize now if I misdo it, is what is promised by a company's marketing and sales effort, and then fulfilled by its delivery and customer service processes. The full positioning of a brand is called the brand's value proposition. It refers to the full mix of benefits on which a brand is differentiated and positioned. Value propositions are referred to as basically the big picture. Value propositions are broad in nature. They're basically a direct output of the company's business strategy. They reflect the brand's promise along with a basket of other benefits offered to multiple marketing segments and the price that consumers pay for those benefits. Now, remember, price isn't just money. Price can also be time and other items that you give up. The value proposition is basically a statement that positions your company within your industry, and it tells the customer why they should invest in your product rather than your competitors. The message and the intent of a value proposition are clear and obvious. All companies do use value propositions to hook customers and reel them in. Now, value propositions are not just slogans. They're an explanation of how your company is going to solve the customer's problem, basically how they're going to fulfill that need, and what benefit the customer can expect. As such, value propositions can be formed using many different elements, not just basically a single sentence alone. The positioning statement reflects a subset of the value proposition. While the value proposition reflects a wide range of primary benefits offered, the positioning statement points to only the most relevant benefits. It points out the difference between your product and that of your competition's products that are meaningful to your target market. Now, a product position is basically the way the product is defined by the consumers on important attributes. You might say the place that the product occupies in the consumer's mind, whether it's actual or a perceived location. And they do this compared to your competition's product. Now, what marketers will do is prepare what's called a positioning map. That shows the consumer's perceptions of their brand versus those of the competition's products on important buying dimensions. This will help companies to plan their differentiation and positioning strategies. Now, the position of each circle on the map indicates the brand's perceived position on two dimensions. The size of each circle indicates the brand's relative strength. Let's take a look at sort of a real life product positioning map based on soap. Now, I always joke that soap is one of my favorite products to look at in marketing because if we really think about, especially hand soap, they all do the same thing, which is to clean your hands. And yet, if you go to your local store, go to your local grocery store, and just look at the huge variety of hand soaps there are, not just bar soaps, but also soft soaps and this soap and that type of soap. We do know if they're sitting there in the store that it has to be selling. So why is it that we need so many different soaps? Well, that's because they basically sit in different positions within the target market. So this particular one is looking at whether it's deodorant versus non-deodorant. And the other one that might be important is low moisturizing versus high moisturizing. Now, there are many other attributes that you might want to look at for soap, but these are the ones that this particular chart is looking at. And so based on this chart, we look at things like zest, which tends to have a lot of deodorant, and it's highly moisturizing. But you also notice that by the shape of its actual little circle, it does not have a very big market share. And yet we can look at Dial right here, which is a little high on the deodorant, but a little low on the moisturizing as far as in the mind of the consumer, and has a huge market share. So if I'm a brand new soap and I want to come into this area, I might want to look for an area that's kind of empty. So right here is kind of an empty area. Now, the question I would probably say is, why is it empty? Why isn't there another brand already there? It may be that this is an area that consumers don't want to buy a product. They have no interest in a non-deodorant, low moisturizing soap. So positioning maps help us see where there may be an empty spot, but also how we fit compared to others. Positioning is basically the result of good marketing strategy planning. To achieve desired positioning, we should begin with an idea of where we want to end up. So as I pointed out, we might want to end up over here because we'd have no competition for that particular area. Finally, positioning is achieved through the attributes and the association of those attributes. Good positioning is credible and it's linked to the value proposition. Now, some positions may already be taken, so I'm not quite certain if we're going to be able to compete against deodorant low moisturizing with Dial and Lifebuoy already being there. And we may have to give up a position if we do want to move into a given area, meaning is that if Dial is already in this location, can Dial also go over to a non-deodorant area? It might have to give up its deodorant first. Each brand's difference has both the potential to increase the company's cost as well as generating customers' benefits. Now, a difference is worth establishing to the extent that it satisfies several criteria. Let's take a look at a few of these. If the difference delivers high value benefit to the customers, it's worth basically promoting. if the competition does not offer the difference or the company can offer it in a more distinctive way. Let's say the difference is superior to the way that the customer might obtain that same benefit from your competition. Can the difference be communicated or visibly even seen by the buyer? Competitors, they also have to not be able to easily copy that difference. Otherwise, you only have a short term for that position. Can the buyers actually afford to pay for the difference between the two? And finally, can the company introduce the difference in a profitable way? These are the things that we look at when we want to differentiate and whether or not we want to actually even promote that difference when we talk about our product. We understand what positioning is. Now we need to talk about actually building a positioning statement. And I start with taglines because I want you to understand that a tagline is different than a positioning statement. Now, a tagline is a verbal or written portion of an advertising message that summarizes the main idea in just a few memorable words. It's also different than a slogan. A slogan's, well, they're more flexible and fluid, whereas taglines should be able to stand the test of time. Slogans are more ubiquitous and appear in campaign commercials, on packaging, and in display ads. Where taglines are, well, they're used more sparingly and generally in what we say public facing messaging. Coca-Cola, the real thing, State Farm, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. These almost have become iconic with the imaging. Whereas position statements is one or two sentences of declaration that communicates your brand's unique value to your customers in relationship to your main competitors. Generally, there are four elements that must be in a good positioning statement. Of course, your target customer, which is basically a concise description of the target group of customers your brand is attempting to appeal to and attract, should be very prominent in this statement. What we say the market definition, what category your brand is basically competing in. A brand promise, which is the most compelling, whether it's emotional or rational benefit to your target customer that your brand can own compared to your competition. And a reason to believe. What is the most compelling evidence that your brand delivers on its brand promises? So what we want is to basically have a statement that looks something like this. Let's take a look at Disney's. Now, it says for, and then we say target customer, in this case, for the young and young at heart. The company's name, Walt Disney World, is what's the marketing definition? Best delivers on immersive and magical experiences. And if we go on, we can see that it actually fills all of these different elements that we're looking for. But it does have a tagline, where dreams come true. So notice the tagline is different than the actual positioning statement. Taglines, sometimes they take a little bit to come through. We've seen companies have some taglines in the beginning that get changed, but then once they find that right tagline, the one that connects to their customers, they don't tend to change it. Once it's chosen a position, a company must take a strong step to deliver and communicate the desired position to its target customers. All companies' marketing mix efforts must support the positioning strategies. Companies find it easier to come up with good positioning statements than implementing them quite often. Once a company has built the desired position, it must take care to maintain the position throughout consistent performance and communication. It must closely monitor and adapt the position over time to match changes in consumers' needs and competitors' strategy. A product's position should evolve gradually as it adapts to ever-changing marketing environment. This is the end of this lecture.